Hey, Flames families. Welcome to Flame Keepers, a podcast from UIC's new student family programs that supports the parents and families of UIC students. I'm your host, Derek Robert Fuchs, Associate Director for Family and Transition Programs here at UIC. And on today's episode, we are joined by our friends from UIC's Campus Housing for the first episode of our summer series to discuss all things about living on campus. So, Flame Keepers guests, please give a warm welcome to Zach Birch and Tony Jackson.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tony Jackson. I'm the Assistant Director for Residential Education with UIC Campus Housing.
Hi, everybody. My name is Zach Birch. I serve as the Director of Residence Life for Campus Housing. Thank you so much for having us.
Zach and Tony, we're super excited that you're going to be here with us today. We're going to talk all things about living on campus. But before we begin, how long have each of you been at UIC?
Yeah, absolutely. I am finishing up my third academic year, going into my fourth this fall.
And I am in my third academic year currently.
Super excited to have you here. Have you all always worked with students in the housing capacity?
I have not. I worked in housing since I was an undergrad. I was an RA. And then my first professional role out of grad school, worked with housing, but then I transitioned to academic success. And so I had 3 years in an academic success center, which was so much fun, but I missed the direct interaction with students, so decided to come back to campus housing.
And I have always worked in campus housing at various institutions, so being able to see students when they are kind of on campus, interacting with them, having conversations about life, academics, everything under the sun, really enjoy the opportunity to create those relationships and those connections.
Excellent. So, and we'll talk more about some of these things later on in the episode, but, there's not so much delineation. The academic component does also come into a student's life on campus, or if they're living on campus, there is the academic piece as part of that too. And so I'm super, super excited to start talking about those things with you all today.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So before we begin talking about how families can support their students who are living on campus, this topic is pretty hot button, no pun intended, for our families. It seems like, they always have questions at orientation about housing. It seems like your all's presentation is typically pretty well attended. And so what can you share with our families just about living on campus before we dive into any support pieces and things like that?
Wonderful. Yeah, we have 10 residence halls that students can choose from, various aspects from traditional double-loaded corridors where people have a roommate and they're sharing a bathroom with the entire community, to more private areas and apartments. It really depends on what the student's looking for and what their student status is. So our apartments are typically more for sophomores and above. First-year students are going to be more in those double-loaded corridors and some suite areas where they might have an enclosed bathroom. They might share the bathroom with the floor. All of our buildings are staffed with resident assistants, RAs. We have some peer mentors, PMs, that are in our first year areas. And then we have our professional staff that also live in. So those are our residence directors, or RDs, as well as our graduate students that help work with it. Those professional staff members work with the students directly. They want to make sure that they are enjoying their experience. They're there in case of an emergency. They're in case of needing to talk to somebody, and they act as a good referral agent to anything else in there. In terms of our buildings, they're all secure. So all of our buildings are locked 24/7. Students who live in the buildings have access to them, those who do not. So we want to make sure that those buildings are safe, that our students are getting their security in there. They're making sure that they feel like they're part of that community. And that's where the RAs come in.
And students get in and out of the buildings via like iCard. There's no hard key until you get actually to like their individual rooms, correct?
Exactly. If you live in the ARC, you do have a fob. So that is a little different than our traditional mechanical key, but most of our units still use those mechanical keys for their primary door for their apartment, and then if they are an apartment style, for their bedroom door as well, so they can be able to lock their private bedroom when they are exiting. But again, that's for our apartment style units.
Yeah. Zach, you talked a little bit about folks who also are living in the residence halls, with students. And you mentioned a resident assistant. And so I was wondering if you could just explain, the role, the purpose of a resident assistant in students' on-campus living experiences.
Yeah. The RAs are there to help build community and be that first line of connection to the institution. So they're typically in a community. We try to keep our communities to be about at one RA for about every 60 or so students. So we want them to be engaging with a smaller community. UIC can be a very big place. So being 1 out of 37,000 is a lot. Being 1 out of 60, you get a little bit more of that intentional, individualized interaction with that student. So that's where the RAs are going to be there. They're going to be helping with transition. They're going to be there as a resource. They're going to be making sure that the buildings continue to be secure. They're going to help with all of that. So that's kind of where our RAs do that. Supplemental to that, we have our peer mentors.
Yeah.
So Tony can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll talk a little bit about our peer mentors. So we also have specialized living communities within our 10 residence halls. So we have our traditional living learning communities. And so if you're listening, you're like, what is a living learning community? That is a space where folks can come together who have a specialized academic interest. So just to give an example, in the ARC, we have future leaders of healthcare. So students within the grand scope of healthcare. So thinking about dentistry, medical school, PA, OT, they can all come together, live together, and really think about what do I need to help get to my next, knowing that their vision and goal for their 4 years maybe has a similar foundation. But what makes it really special is that the peer mentor comes into play. That is a student who's a sophomore or even all the way to our super senior that is coming in to support that community that's currently living that out here on UIC's campus. So going back to our future leaders of healthcare, traditionally we've had peer mentors that are taking the MCAT to get ready for med school. They're doing research. They're doing farm tech positions over the weekend to really help advance their outside of their academics. What does it mean to be an active student that has these resume points that helps them get into med school, dentistry, really whatever program they want next? Also, our peer mentors offer tutoring. So one-on-one tutoring for these classes that we know our students may be struggling with because they're difficult. The stories I've heard my peer mentors say about organic chemistry, I'm like, I'm glad that's no longer my life.
I tapped out of that before I could get to it. So,
but our peer mentors do have a higher GPA just within the position because they offer tutoring. So they're able to come in and offer this one-on-one tutoring, study groups if they want to do this group merger. So it's really great to think about that academic component we talked about earlier. Our peer mentors, that is their goal and focus to helping students succeed.
Yeah, so it seems like within a residence hall there are elements of community. That seems like both the RAs and peer mentors facilitate in their own ways, but then there still is a focus on academics. And so
100%.
like talking about those communities that are like-minded, I didn't know that, there was tutoring, what I mean, that happens, through that. And I mean, yeah, it makes sense, but, I didn't have an on-campus living experience during my undergrad. And so, I'm learning, stuff, just through this conversation. And that's really cool. And so do you find that students who are participating in those learning communities, or just, I think, participate just in the residence hall community, are they reporting, they're having, a greater sense of belonging? They feel like they're enjoying, their college experience more?
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that. We're seeing a lot of people who are choosing to live on campus feeling like they're much more connected to UIC as a whole. Mm-hmm. They're able to find their way because they are living on campus. So everything is just within walking distance. They don't have to worry about going to find a meal because the dining hall is right here. They don't have to worry about trying to schedule a time to find a professor's office hours because they live on campus and it could be 3 buildings over. They're making those connections. They're making that relationship with the university as well as with the people in their community to find that support, which is really important to their overall success.
Something that I found really interesting while just communicating with our students that are involved in these communities, or even upperclassmen that have chosen to come to campus, I asked them, so what made you decide to want to move onto campus your second or third year after not living on campus your first year? And they said, I felt really disconnected from campus, and I wanted to be closer to the opportunities that I was interested in, or that was going to help me to get to my next. And so we do see some second and third year students who are like, I need to be on campus because of what I want my experience to look like while I'm here at UIC. And those are just really cool conversations to have.
And I think that's one of the unique things about UIC is that we don't have a live-on requirement. So we offer housing to anybody who wants it, but we're going to making sure that people are signing up early. So as we are going into the summer, it's really important that you start looking for signing your housing contract, finding a space, securing that, because we have a lot of people who will want to live on campus. So the earlier you do that, the more options you have.
Yeah. And our podcast reaches a lot of families, specifically a lot of first-year families, might be, tuning into this. And so I know that new or incoming first-year students, they can start selecting rooms and stuff like that and going through the process soon, correct?
Yeah, the end of May is when that starts.
End of May. Okay, so families, you heard that. If your student is considering living on campus, the end of May is when they can start looking in. They have a housing portal.
Yep, they can go through the housing portal right now and start signing their contracts. Their rooms will be starting to be able to be selected towards the end of May.
Awesome. And so really excited to get some folks on campus. It's always really fun, especially on move-in day, to see everyone coming in or coming back in. And just it's a really fun day on campus. And so I would be remiss if we didn't discuss cost, because our families want to know, hey, how much, does it cost to live on campus? So I was wondering if each or one of you could just shed some light on that or provide some information.
Yeah. So our costs do vary based on location. So Zach mentioned earlier, there are 10 options to choose from. But then once you pick your building, there are different types. So you can say, oh, I want to have a single studio in one of our upper class apartment buildings. That is going to cost more than if I'm sharing an apartment with 3 other people and I just have my private bedroom. So that is important to make that distinction of where, but then moving through on what type of room you want to live in. And so you'll see that listed on our website. And so different rates for different buildings as well.
I was just going to ask, where can families and students, go to find out just any of this information that we've talked about? Is there a specific website?
Yeah, all this information is available on our housing website, which is uic.edu/housing. So that's one of the things that you can look for is all of our rates, all of our policies, all of our procedures. The student handbook is on there. We have lots of good resources for students to be able to review before they come to campus.
And then one thing that I wanted to add in, a question that we get are there any housing scholarships? That is a question that we get. And so just want to encourage families that when you are filling out your information of saying, does my student plan to live on campus within your FAFSA, if you check no, you probably want to recheck that, because what happens is UIC pulls that information, and then based on the other information submitted within the FAFSA, they will automatically see if the student is eligible for a housing grant. And then so if they checked yes, then when the student received their financial aid packet from the university, it will tell them whether or not that they received that housing grant. So that is an important thing to do. I talked to a couple of families and they're like, we didn't see that, but we didn't say on our FAFSA that our student was going to live on campus. So that is an important distinction to do if you are wanting to know that information as well.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. That's a really, really good piece of information that I was unaware of. So thank you so much. So families, you've got an option to, receive, a little extra, money potentially that could help, offset some of your students' expenses.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that also our students talk about is that when you start thinking about living on campus, all of your stuff is going to your student account. So that is your rent, your utilities. If if you have a meal plan, that's all taken care of in one space, as opposed to if you're living off campus, you're going to be paying your rent to your landlord. You're going to have your electric, your water, your internet, everything else set up separately. All of that is included in our total cost for living on campus. So there is going to could be a little bit of sticker shock when you start seeing the numbers, but when you consider all of the benefits, so that includes electric, water, your laundry is covered. That's all taken care of in that. So students don't need to worry about finding quarters like I did when I was in college. Being able to look at all of that and say, everything's on one bill and it's all going through my student account.
I completely feel you on the quarters thing. Until I moved to Chicago, I've been able to have an in-unit laundry and putting the quarters in the slot. Like, I mean, it does bring back some memories of going to the laundromat with my parents. And so, thanks so much for sharing the information. You talked about meal plans just real quick, and I know that with certain universities that I've worked at previously, students who live on campus, depending on residence hall, they had to have a meal plan, or if you were living on campus, you had to have a meal plan. Is that something that happens here as well? Do students have to have a meal plan if they live in the residence halls?
So yes, and maybe yes, but
okay,
it
yes, but
depends
okay
on which residence hall that they are living in. So if you are an incoming first year student, you will be living in a residence hall that does require a meal plan. Our apartments that do have full kitchens within the primary apartment itself, those like are MRH, TBH, SSR, and realize I should probably be using actual names of the spaces versus our acronyms, but they do have kitchens within that apartment unit that, let's say we're all living together, that we are sharing, that doesn't require. But thinking about our incoming first year students, they should plan on having a meal plan. And like Zach said, that is on our website. So it says, this is how much is the room, this is how much is the required meal plan, and here's that total. So it's already all factored in if they're looking at our website.
And which residence halls are designated as the first year residence halls?
So our first year typically are going to be living at the Academic and Residential Complex, or ARC.
Beautiful building, by the way, everyone.
That's the newest building that we have on campus. It opened in 2019.
It's got a coffee shop in it. It's really close to the Blue Line. Like, great building and location.
Then we have Courtyard, and we have the Commons. Those are more of our traditional areas. And then we have our James Stuckel Towers, which is down on our south end of campus, and that is more suite style. So there's going to be 4, 5, and 8 person suites that are all living together with a common room and 1 to 2 bathrooms, depending on the number of students that are living there.
And Polk Street Residence, which is over on the West Campus, has a larger first-year community as well.
All right, yeah, and all the buildings are great here on campus. They all have their own unique charms, and they're all really pretty centrally located. I mean, I think which JST and MRH are going down towards Maxwell.
They're a little bit further south on Halstead. PSR, Polk Street Residence, and Single Student Residence, SSR, are the ones that are a little bit out of the way, but those are in our Illinois Medical District. So SSR, we typically see some more upper division students and medical students that are going to be living over there. We just reopened Polk Street Residence this past fall, and we saw some first-year students head over that way, and they seem to be enjoying the community over there. We're going to be continuing to open up another floor next year of PSR, so it's exciting to see that community continue to grow.
Awesome. And I mean, families, if you're listening in, we have a great campus shuttle system. The CTA, the buses, they run through campus. So even if your student is down further, like in the MRH, JST areas, there's a way that they can get pretty quickly, efficiently, and readily down to campus where their academic classes are and things like that. And so I just don't want our families to think that we're putting them all the way out and they're going to have to trek through the Chicago winters at a class if they're not living like directly like close to campus.
And there are classrooms under TBH as well.
I'm learning new stuff every day, you all. Classes
there, but I live on that side of campus, and I will say if I'm wearing my sneakers, I can probably get to the main student center in under 10 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, it's a straight shot pretty much down
Exactly.
Halstead. So thanks you all for sharing all of the information about that. So thanks you all for providing information just about housing in general here at UIC. Really appreciated that conversation. But I was wondering, what are some, we've got students that are wanting to learn campus. They're having these conversations with their families, and this is sometimes a student's first time, living, away from their family. So they're living more autonomously. They've got their own space, but I remember when I first moved out, I had to learn so much about what it meant to be living, a little bit more on my own. But I was wondering if you all just wouldn't mind sharing, what are some common transitional issues or things, that you've seen, a first year student have to adjust to, or just any student, who is, who's making that transition from, I've lived with my family, or I've lived with others, and now I'm living more on my own.
Absolutely. So there are three things that come to mind. And the first one I want to start with is the ability to keep your own schedule. So what we see, students are like, I can do an 8 a.m. I've been doing this at school. I've been getting there. And then they come to our campus and they're within week 2. Why did I sign up for 8 a.m.? We're getting...
That was me as a student.
I agree. Every time I tried to sign up for an 8 a.m. class, it's always the beginning of the semester when you think you've got all that motivation, and then I've come to realize I'm not a morning person.
I learned real quick that at 9 a.m.s were more my jam.
Yeah.
So
More of a 10 a.m. person.
My first year was really great, but then my sophomore year, I was like, what am I doing? Why am I signing up for this? But the ability to just keep their own schedule, because what we know is that when a student misses class, and they're losing $150 every time they are skipping one class. And so what I appreciate about UIC, and we talked about our peer mentors earlier, is that our faculty for most high yield first year classes, they will do an academic alert system, and saying this student, we're worried about how they're performing, how they're showing up. So they'll ping myself, and then I'll work with the peer mentor team to check in on that student, just make sure, hey, is everything good? Do you want to talk about your resources? Do we need to drop this class? Have you communicated with your professor? Just to make sure, oh, I'm not going to this class for 3 weeks. How many assignments, quizzes have you missed that put your grades in a questionable spot? So again, it's really to help aid them, because oh, I can miss this 8 a.m. It's no big deal. Well, if you've missed 4 assignments and we're already in October, we're at midterms, how much room do you have to really help bring that grade up in your class? So that just schedule keeping is really important as we're referring back to the academic component of what our students are doing. The next one is laundry. Everybody thinks that
The
doing
L
laundry
word.
at 11 a.m. on a Sunday is great. You and about 100 other people that live in your building. So you will be waiting for a machine, my friend. So thinking about when you're thinking about making your own schedule, I'm done with class Tuesday at noon. You know what would be great at 1 p.m.? Doing your laundry, because I bet there's not a lot of other people there. But we have the story from one of our resident directors where he was just kind of making walks of the building, and he walks into the laundry room in JST, and there's just a student holding a detergent container in their hand, just looking at their laundry, looking at the detergent, just completely stumped. He's like, hey friend, you need some help? And at that moment, he taught that young man how to do his laundry. So teaching your students how to do laundry is a great first step. Or if you're I don't know if my student is going to be able to get this fully locked in, start with pods. Start with the pods. They are a game changer for students. And then my last one is just learning how to live with someone that you're not related to or that you've never lived with before, knowing that one of the beauties of UIC is it's so diverse. But we have students of different cultures coming to live together, and sometimes those cultures don't always sing in concert together as it pertains to living experiences. So how do we work through and compromise and find a way where we can live in unison, where we can be appreciative of the other cultures coming and learning, but also understanding this is my home, this is my safe space, and we are deciding to make this safe space together. So what does that look like as well? We do see roommate conflicts. We see people like, I can't live with them anymore. I'm done. Have you talked to them? Absolutely not. Okay, well, there's a great first step. So being open to conversation and to conflict this summer, if you're having like things like, oh, I'm just going to sweep this under the rug, like this is them. Think about, how do you leaving 8 pairs of shoes by the door impact other people entering this space? Just the small little things to help them talk through how those actions impact others.
And do you all have I'm thinking about just me back like in my 19, 20, things like that. And I'm thinking about like, I don't know if I would have been able to talk with someone, that I was, maybe having a conflict with. Are there supports that students can seek out within the residence halls that they can maybe get some support helping mediate that conversation?
Yeah, so we start off the year with having the RAs go and talk to each of the roommate pairs, and they fill out a roommate agreement. Typically, this is done within the first couple of weeks of the semester. We recognize that's still pretty much a honeymoon period. So I agree to everything. This sounds great. And then right around midterms, when stress is really hitting in, that's when we see a lot of our first major roommate conflicts occurring. So what we encourage students to do is to talk to their RA first and have the RA who's been trained in basic conflict mediation help to figure out if there is compromise there. And if the conflict is continuing to rise, that's when we're going to the professional staff, the resident director of the building. That way that they can be self-contained. We're following our protocols and making sure that the students know that this is in building resources, because having them or having their parents email me slows down that process, because I have to then go, okay, I got to go talk to the RD. Have you heard about this? No. Okay, let's have the RD talk to the RA. Have you heard about this? No. It's really about making sure that the student knows to go. We're trying to solve the problem as locally as possible. Yeah. So we start with the RA who's on the floor, then we go to the building, and if it's not solved from there, the RD can look into moving people around as we have spaces available.
Yeah. I think what's also important as we're getting into housing application and picking rooms, the student's going to be prompted with a questionnaire of, do you want to live with someone that has an assistant and animal? Do you want to stay up late? Do you want to rise early? It is very important that your student is answering that as truthfully as they can. It's just helpful, especially if they don't have a set roommate in mind, thinking about if I know I'm living with a stranger, because I don't know anyone who else is living on UIC's campus, can I find someone that maybe has a similar cadence of life, a similar maybe, oh, we're both early risers, or oh no, we both need a 10 a.m. start time. Those are great things to really help proactively mitigate the tensions that we see arise, which currently are just lifestyle differences of, I want to play video games, no headphones until 1 a.m. And you're like, I need to wake up to go to the gym at 6 a.m. Just even saying that, we can see the natural tension that's going to occur from there. So just being like, what do I need in this season, and filling that out as honestly as possible.
I also think just making sure that we're not setting up expectations to be too high. I think that's one of the big things that students often come in like, oh, I got randomly assigned a roommate. They're going to be my best friend and we're going to hang out. That they can be friendly. I was randomly assigned to a roommate at my undergrad. We coexisted well. We didn't really have a good, strong relationship, but we were able to live together. We didn't have much conflict in that capacity. Over my career, I've seen the gamut. So I've seen people who've come in and they have a stranger and they become best friends. I've seen people who are oil and water. I've seen people who've come in as best friends from high school and they end up fighting the entire time because they're not prepared to be spending that much time with everybody else.
I was going to say, sometimes living with your friend, or your best friend, can be
it can be a lot.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to navigate what that looks like, because you're used to seeing them only for free for 8 hours a day, and now they're there all the time. So being able to have those frank conversations with the roommate about, this is kind of what I want out of this relationship. What are you wanting out of this relationship? And that's what our RAs are going to help try to coach out of them.
I love the mentality that I feel like professionals or take of like finding your third space. You know, you have your home life, you have your work life, but where's your third space? And that's what I really want our students to do. UIC has so many cool pockets, and also the city of Chicago is just like a wonderful place
Oh my
to
gosh,
be.
yes.
And so what's your third space? Like, can you find another space on campus besides your room or besides the classroom where you feel like you can really be you? Because that is going to be helpful. Every pocket of roommates at least has one tension point. It could be as small as a pinhead, or it could be as big as the bean downtown, right?
Which I still haven't seen yet.
Okay, we have to rectify that.
This summer, I'm going to try. I'm going to try my best.
But tension and conflict is a normal part of just having relationships with people. And so I think this idea of, I feel really uncomfortable. That's okay to feel uncomfortable. The question we want to pose is, do you feel unsafe? Like, how do we need to navigate through that? But discomfort is okay because you're building relationships. I don't have perfect relationships with everyone in my life. And so how do we work through the tension, not over it?
Yeah. I really like what you said. Uncomfortable versus unsafe, because there is a big difference, especially when living, together. And something that I've learned, through the years in families, if you're listening, something that I've learned is that, like, when you're with people, whether it's in a living capacity, a working capacity, like, all relationships are mirrors. Like, and they reflect, things, back to me that I am like, ooh, I don't, like maybe I'm not a perfect person, and, that's okay. And I think that that's part of this experience, I mean, living with someone can, really do some great things. And so
Being open to feedback as well. Like, I don't like it when you don't wear headphones when you watch TikToks. I remember my partner said that to me. I'm like, so you hate me? I'm like, no, I just don't need to hear about your 7-step skincare routine at 10 p.m. Okay, I understand. So when we're asking how our families can support our students through this transition, asking your students critical questions of like, are you uncomfortable? What's sitting with that, and then what can we do to rectify it? Myself and you putting some action onto their student, and being open to have those conversations. Be like, this is maybe how you could have showed up better in this space, and this is how I could. Because those are the conversations that we will be having when conflict arises. That's kind of the first step of a mediation of what happened and why are you feeling this way.
And to continue with that, I think it's really important for families to realize that their student is the contract holder.
Yes, 100%.
So their student is the person that will be doing all the things. So it's great. I appreciate families. I appreciate parents and their investment in their students. I have a child myself, so I understand that. At the same time, they have to be the adults in this room. As they've come to the university, they're seen as adults. So calling and saying, I need this to happen, this to happen, this to happen, may not be the most easy thing to do, because what we will do first is always go back to the contract holder. We're going to go back to the student and say, what do you need? I can't tell you how many times that I've had calls from parents that are saying, you need to move my student right now because X, Y, and Z. And then I go and talk to the student, like, oh yeah, I was just venting to my mom. I was not really that angry at my roommate. So just being able to let the student be in the driver's seat of what their experience is going to be.
And self-advocacy, I feel like we talk a lot about this, especially like at UIC, because, it is such an important thing for anyone to develop, whether you're, in college or, not. And so, that is a really good point, to make, is that, families, like in all things, whether it's the living on campus, piece, whether it's something with the academics, your student is the one, that has to advocate for themselves and say what they need, which can be difficult when you are 18 and 19 and,
Totally.
Yeah, and we get it. Like, you have been the primary advocate for them through their K-12 education, and it might be a difference. It's something that we're learning with the student and we're learning as ourselves.
Yeah. And, families, my mother to this day, when we talk, I share this at orientation. So families, if you're coming to orientation, you're going to hear this again. My mother and I, when we talk, the first thing that she'll say, oftentimes is, okay, do you want my advice or do you just want me to listen? And I think that that's just a beautiful way to set up conversations with your student, because that does allow them to be, it's like a mini self-advocacy lesson. In that moment, they get to tell you what they need. And so, and we want to encourage and continue that, to grow that, even in just small things.
Sure.
Zach and Tony, thank you so much for just everything, that you've shared just about living on campus, what that transition is like, how our families can be supportive of their students who are going to be, joining the on-campus community. We're talking outside, of your areas of expertise in housing. And so, what advice would you give to just families in general, who are going to be supporting a student or who are supporting students in college?
I think the number one piece of advice that I give parents and families and students alike is help your student find a way to engage with campus. We know from decades of research that students who are engaged in campus are more likely to graduate with a higher GPA. We also know from several different scholars that students who are developing and connecting with relationships on campus are going to be much more likely to, one, have a positive college experience, two, look back and look fondly on their college experience, and three, graduate in 4 to 6 years. That's, I think, the Gallup-Purdue Index from like 12 years ago was the first major point that says that. So thinking about how we can engage. So whether that is looking at something like our Residence Hall Association, which is a group of students that puts on events and advocates for change in the residence halls, looking at joining a fraternity or a sorority, joining a club that's directly related to your major, joining a club that you have a passion for, finding something that is going to help you be part of the community is really where it's going to be. I think too often our students nowadays are living in their, 3x6 little cell phone worlds, but the college campus is so alive all the time. We've got speakers, we've got artists, we've got various things that are constantly coming to campus, and it's a great way to engage, get to know people, see what that looks like, and that's where those relationships are going to form that are going to help people be successful here. My research for my dissertation showed that students were using those connections to be able to find support. So one of the things that we talk a lot about is students might be struggling with mental health and they don't know where to go. Because the students I talked to said that because they were involved, because they had connections, they found different ways to go, and they had a group that they could commiserate with, and they felt supported both emotionally as well as academically. So being able to be successful in all aspects of their lives.
I have 3. And the first one piggybacks off of Zach's one. Do not take for granted the first 6 weeks of the semester. And when Zach was referencing different scholars and practitioners within our field of supporting students, the first 6 weeks is when a student decides if they are staying or if they are leaving the institution at the close of the semester, which kind of goes into my next point of the student experience is exactly what you make it.
Agreed.
And so I just think about when we have our involvement fair on the quad and hundreds of tables and different interests of an anime club to a dance club.
There's a K-pop like club. And
There's a club for everything.
yeah.
Everything. And if there's not, find 10 friends, because guess what? You just founded a new club. And so just being able to, what do I want my experience to look like? And then reflection question, am I acting and behaving in a way that aligns to what I'm hoping it will be? Because if I'm hoping I have a big friend group and that we're going to eat dinner at the cafeteria together every single night, but you don't talk to anyone and you're only looking at your phone, I would say that there's probably some disconnect between your expectation and between how you are showing up. So take advantage of the first 6 weeks. Everybody wants to meet anybody and somebody. And then also, your experience is exactly what you want it to be. And then my last point is parents, families, loved ones, students, it's okay to fail. It's okay to go out for that club and they're like, not you. It's okay. You know what? You gave it a shot and then you are now more bolder to enter in to the next. With my work with the peer mentors, most of them, by the time they get to me as their supervisor, they're like, I've never made a B in my entire life. And I'm not going to start. And I'm like, that's a great goal. But what if you did? What would happen? And, they're like, my life would fall apart. Would it really? Or would it just be disappointing? And so it's okay to take a risk and to try something. Within campus housing, we try to create a safety net so that when our students do try something and it doesn't succeed, let's talk about it. Let's create space for it, and let's think about how we can grow and build onto it. So it's okay if it doesn't shake out the way you want it to, and you have this 4-year plan, and you're like, I need to be doing research by this time, and I need to be president of an organization by this time. What if it doesn't work out?
Yeah.
That's okay. And I think with a lot of comparison culture within social media, it's not okay. And so just teaching our students the value of putting themselves out there.
Yeah.
I think just building off of that, being open to the experience. I came to college and I knew what my life was going to be. I was going to get I have a bachelor's degree in chemistry. I don't use it other than the fact that it's a bachelor's degree, because I found a passion for education. And that's where I was able to move my life and go in a different direction for that. But that's where being open to what comes next. There's going to be a lot of opportunities, exploring what those can be, and having the opportunity, taking the advantage. So, like Tony said, taking the risk, going out for that, running for a student government president. You may or may not get it, but you tried. Yeah. And then one final academic note: please review your syllabi.
Yes.
Check your emails.
Please check your emails. Your syllabi will tell you everything you need to know about the semester. I learned that far too late into my first semester of college that I was like, oh, I don't know when this test is going to be because they're just going to throw it at me. Nope, it was scheduled. So making sure that you understand that everything in your syllabi is exactly how your semester is going to go. So you, as the main person in control of your own experience, are going to be able to structure your life around when things are going to be due.
100%. That's a really good one. Check your emails. Read your syllabus.
Use office hours. They're not scary.
So, and a plug, for another Flame Keepers episode that we did previously, we actually just talked about how to go about making relationships with faculty. And so check that episode out if you're curious for more. And so, and with that, folks, that's all for us today. Zach and Tony, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for sharing all the information, and thank you for supporting our families. Our families, need support as they're supporting their students throughout this journey of the college experience. And so I'm really thankful that you all have joined us just to provide support to them just through this conversation. And so before we officially close out, is there anything that you all would want to plug in terms for campus housing?
I just remember earlier I talked about our living learning communities and our specialized communities. I just want to note that we also have affinity dwellings, which are communities where folks of shared identity can opt to live in together. So we have 6 of them. And so if you're looking at our website, you can find our specialized affinity dwellings, which are more identity based, and then our living learning communities, which are more academic based. So it creates two different experiences, but all within this specialized feature. So realized I didn't finish that thought, but yeah, there it is.
I think what I would just plug is build relationships. That's what it's all about. Connect with your RA, connect with your RD, connect with RHA, connect with everybody that you can, because that's going to be how you're going to be able to build your experience. If you're interested in potentially joining us on our team, we will be launching our applications in mid to late September for the 2027-2028 school year for our RAs, our peer mentors. And then we're always looking for people who might be interested in working at our front desks.
Absolutely.
So we have a lot of employment opportunities in campus housing. Look on Handshake, get in contact with your residence director or your housing officer in your area.
Yeah, and if you're concerned about like, oh, I don't have any collegiate leadership experience, also you just got here. So there's that. But also we have Campfire, which is a joint venture
Oh, yes.
in the summer where we really just get to work with students and be like, let's talk about leadership and getting involved. And then once you arrive to campus, all of our affinity dwellings that I mentioned earlier do have affinity group positions and executive boards for those. So if you're like, I'm really passionate about like the queer experience, we have an affinity group e-board that will plan events specifically for our queer students that live on campus. And so again, we have 6 of those communities. So really tap into your leadership if that's something you're passionate about.
Excellent. Well, Zach and Tony, thank you so much for joining us on today's
thanks for having us.
episode. And Flames families, please tune in for our next episode of Flame Keepers for the summer. It'll be coming out sooner than you think. Have a great one.
Bye now.
Flames families, that's going to wrap up another episode of Flame Keepers, the podcast that seeks to support the parents and families of UIC students. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you have any questions for us about anything that we've talked about today, please feel free to send us an email at famhelp@uic.edu. That's famhelp@uic.edu. Again, we hope you enjoyed today's episode of Flame Keepers and that you join us for our next one. Take care.